So we've got two parts to go through. I think we can go through both of them in a single video. Part 5 has the two toughest questions on the lab. Now it's a mystery to me. I don't understand why they're tough, but people have trouble with them, so I'm warning you about it. First question's pretty easy. And we're not video systems, basically. Is that we only process stuff that we pay attention to and store kind of actively. So if you don't pay attention to something, it isn't automatically in there for you to retrieve later, no matter how much, some fiction tells you you can bring it out under hypnosis. If you didn't actually, look at the getaway car's license plate and go, oh, there's the number. I'll try to remember this for later. If it just drove by you when you glanced at the car, it's not like you have a video image that you can zero in on the license plate later. And that means that you're going to spend your life needing to remember stuff and going, oh crap, I wasn't paying attention to that. That's all we're really looking for on the first question. It's just give me an example where you needed to remember something and realized you couldn't remember it because you didn't pay attention to it in the first place. The second question has to do with when it's in there, what happens to it? They used to think that whatever form memories took, and we're still not absolutely sure what that is, that it would degrade over time, it would fade. We don't believe that anymore, unless your cells actually die from some sort of dementia-producing damage that you get older. As you're older, you get popped out of head. It's more like this major storage system where it's like you going, where's that picture? Where's that picture? I don't remember where I put that picture. Or on your laptop going, I know I got this document. I wrote it. It's in here somewhere. I don't remember what file I put it in. I don't remember what I named it. And so you can't get it. That's the way your brain works too, where you're trying to retrieve it, but you're not really sure where it is. And the longer it's been out there and the rarer you've accessed it, then the harder it is to retrieve it. And that's what we're looking for, is a situation where you've worked the other way. By reinforcing it, by remembering it over and over and over again, you've made a memory more accessible, stronger. And you can do that actively, like you're studying for an exam. You can do that passively, like somebody starts singing a commercial jingle from 15 years ago, and like 3 notes in, you're singing along with them, because you heard it 12,000 times, so it's really jammed in your brain. And that's all we're looking for, is it's just an example of you keeping a memory active by reinforcing it, by looking at it over and over and over again. We don't store memories whole. We store memories in bits and pieces. So you're walking down the street and somebody's coming the other way, far enough away that they don't have a mask on so you can see their whole face. And a little voice in your brain goes, I think we know this person. And you go, okay, brain, who is it? Well, your brain doesn't go through every face of every person you've ever seen. Your brain actually has an algorithm. It looks at people's faces. And based on certain things, aspects of the faces, like basic, I think, you can look it up. But it'll go, okay, based on this, I gotta look in this file. And based on this, I gotta look in this part of this file. And based on this, I gotta look in this part of this file. And eventually, it very quickly goes from every face you've ever seen down to a very small file with just a few faces in it. But the problem you wind up with is that all the faces in that little file are very similar to one another. That's how you got there. And so you have trouble, that's either somebody I had in class with me 2 years ago or my second grade teacher, and your brain goes, I don't know, I'm not really sure which one it is. That's called distortion. And it doesn't just work with faces, it works with all sorts of information that's similar, where you're at a test and it goes, what year was this war? And you go, I don't know, I got it confused with 5 other wars. I don't really remember. Is it just this morning I was watching the news and Trump was talking about how the Spanish flu had an effect on World War II. Well, it was World War I. Distortion. Your memories get jumbled. Now, for this question, we are looking specifically for a situation where this has happened. you've had this confusion between similar memories in an academic setting, in a school-based setting. So that's the question. Now the next one is the one that people have trouble with. I don't understand why. When you learn stuff, you have a brain full of information. Some of it's, academic, a lot of it has to do with life. And you're not gonna go very long. I'll tell you right now, you're not going 2 weeks from whenever you're watching this where this isn't gonna happen to you at least once. Where somebody's gonna tell you something, or you're gonna see something, or information's gonna come at you, and your brain's gonna check and go, well, I don't think that's right. Because what you have in here and what you have out here contradict each other. They can't both be right. Either one of them's right and one of them's wrong, or they're both wrong, or they're both sort of right. But this is called interference. New information interferes with information you already have in your brain. And if this is information you need to use, what are you gonna do next time this comes up? You're gonna remember the old stuff or the new stuff? You have to kind of pick and choose. And then you have to kind of shut down the part that you decided you weren't gonna use. You have to inhibit it. So you'll notice this question talks about interference or inhibition. And there's two versions of this. Is that you got two things that you are gonna select later as the right information. Which is it? If you look and you look at this new information and you go, no, that's not right. Is that what I know already is, like people are telling me, oh no, you can't be sure that the antibodies are gonna last because the antibodies are dropping. And I go, no, it's the antibodies aren't important. It's the T cells and the CD8 cells and the CD4 cells, and those are persisting. So I'm not particularly worried about the immunity dropping from the coronavirus because I know stuff that tells me this new stuff isn't really right. So when this comes up, the old stuff is what's coming out. That's called proactive interference, is that I'm resisting the new information. But every day I'm reading about the coronavirus, and sometimes I'll read something and go, oh, okay, I thought it worked this way, but this is a much more convincing portrayal of it, about how it really works. So now I'm gonna take this new information and stick it in here, and that's gonna be the information I now remember about that aspect of whatever, coronavirus. So we're looking for an example for both. Proactive interference, where your internal information is what you stuck with and you resisted changing your mind. I mean, this really is about changing your mind. And retroactive, where you literally do go in and substitute the new stuff for the old stuff. The old stuff, it doesn't disappear, it just goes into kind of a side file. And now later, you remember the new stuff over the old stuff. You retroactively have gone into your memory and filled with it. So that's what we're looking for, an example of proactive interference, an example of retroactive interference. And as I said, it happens to everybody. They're opposites, so you can't give me the same example twice. Sometimes people give me one example split in half. That doesn't work. As I said, you can always email me if it's not clear, or talk to me in the lab. But this is the question people most have trouble coming up with a good example of. And it's hard from reading it. I've messed with the phrasing on it many, many times, that people go, they read it too fast and they go, oh, this is remembering old stuff or remembering new stuff. No, it's not. So tell me about something that happened in your childhood. Unless you've had a reason to look at that and go, well, maybe that isn't what really happened. That's not interference. Okay, so on to part 6. Part 6 is brain development through adolescence. Is your brain goes through all sorts of changes as you come up as like infants to kids and stuff. But when you hit adolescence, is that whether it goes through stages is kind of controversial. And I kind of swiped these lists from somebody who said, this is what college students go through in terms of brain development. So I'm gonna walk you very quickly through the stages like I always do. I'm not gonna read them. I'm gonna paraphrase. So if it isn't clear, read the papers down here. Read the papers. Stage 1 tends to be the stage you come in on where you have a very black, white, yin, yang, either or way of looking at the world, a simplified way of looking at the world. So, you know, they wouldn't be in charge if they didn't know what they were doing. If it's written on the internet, it must be true. You know, you have a kind of simplified way of dealing with information. And then you get into college, and we don't give you 2 choices. We give you 15 different choices. They're all different shades of you know, chartreuse or whatever. And now you're forced with sorting through information and trying to decide what's good information and what's maybe not so good information, what's reliable, what's not reliable. Now you're into stage 2, where multiplicity, you get lots and lots and lots of different versions of the same thing. And it's real easy to go, well, why can't people just believe what they want to believe and have that be perfectly okay? You have your truth, I have my truth, they have their truth, everything's wonderful. Personal truth. Those are the 2 parts of the label for stage 2. And that works fine in an academic setting, but when you get into a situation where you need to kind of apply these truths, you do find out that they don't all work equally well. Some of them are pretty reliable and some of them are pretty terrible. And so now you have to sort through and try to decide, you know, what you're really going to work with and what you're not going to work with. And so you're doing a lot of comparing. That's where the relativism is. And it's being thrown at you as you go into whatever, the context of your life. So contextual relativism. A lot of times people at this stage will settle on some very hard and fast rules for trying to decide what's good and bad. And that's kind of holds you in stage 3. Stage 4, you get more flexible. You start to realize that this is not a one-size-fits-all answer, that what's good for one person may be terrible for another person. What worked this year because of changes isn't going to work next year. And so you're judging everything on more or less on a case-by-case basis. And this is stage 4, called responsible knowing. I'll tell you a little secret. When people come up with these levels and give them names, whatever has the coolest name is going to be the group they feel they're in. Who doesn't want to have responsible knowing? But you've got a 2-part question on the end of this, which is, which group do you feel like you're in, and why? So there's your 2 things. What and why. It can be tricky because you can be in one stage in one aspect of your life and in a different stage in another aspect of your life. But you know, for most of this lab, there are no wrong answers. You just have 2 parts to answer and make sure you get both parts answered. Okay, that is the lab. And we will work out, you know, when it's due and how it's due and all that other stuff when the time comes. Right now, it's too early in August. We're still working out the details. I'm about to put up another information video on what it looks like the fall semester is going to be like. So that gives you an idea of the context.